Public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity to the level of press, radio, and films. If anyone here represents a media agency, please contact Mark N. The members of the North Central Indiana area of Narcotics Anonymous welcome you to our third annual Grow with Love convention. We'd like to thank you for joining us in this celebration of recovery. We're deeply grateful to Narcotics Anonymous and find great joy in being able to express our gratitude here with you, our family. In Narcotics Anonymous, we are certain that when we come together to share our lives and our love with each other, a miracle happens. Our recovery takes hard work, courage, and commitment. Those are the things that carry us through as we seek the spiritual growth that comes from working the 12 steps. Never alone, we do this together and for each other, knowing that we need each other because more than anything else, we grow with love. The preface to the basic text begins, the full fruit of a labor lives in the harvest, and that harvest always comes in its right season. For us, our season has come. I've asked a friend to read just for today.
I'm Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Just for today, my thoughts will be on my recovery, living and enjoying life without the use of drugs. Just for today, I'll have faith in someone in NA who believes in me and wants to help me in my recovery. Just for today, I'll have a program. I will try to follow it to the best of my ability. Just for today, through NA, I will try to get a better perspective on my life. Just for today, I will be unafraid. My thoughts will be on my new associations, people who are not using and have found a new way of life. So long as I follow that way, I have nothing to fear.
Thank you, Scott. This workshop is on relationships, and I've known our first speaker for a couple of years through coming to this convention, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce Diane.
I'm a recovering addict named Diane. And I'm really surprised to be in this workshop. I sent my registration in early. This may be a lesson for me. And I got a really nice letter back from Gary that said, thanks for your registration, and would you like to do a workshop? Of course you'd like to do a workshop. We signed you up for a workshop, and would you like to know what that is? Of course you would, and as soon as we figure it out, we'll let you know. And when I got here, they let me know, and I just started to laugh, because I think the God of my understanding has a wonderful sense of humor. I did a workshop a few years ago on relationships with who was at that time my significant other. And a week later we broke up, so this is kind of scary because now we're engaged. So a lot of faith walking into this workshop. Relationships, immediately I thought that when I got in recovery and I heard about relationships, I figured male, female, husband. That's my train of thought. And I knew I needed to work on that because out there, I'd married 6 times, so I knew I didn't have a clue. Even when I was a kid, I didn't do relationships well. I didn't get along, I didn't play nice with the other kids, I was different from everybody else, and they were trying to breathe my air. I can remember that we'd go on trips, and I'd have to sit in the front seat between my parents because everybody else was breathing my air or touching me, and so I didn't get along well with anybody, and I always wanted things my way. I didn't have an idea what compromise meant, to the point where, I would try to drive your car for you while I'm going down the road, and I didn't mind telling you, and I got into fights that way. I would pull into parking lots, and people would pull in after me because of what I said. As I was driving, they could read my lips, or I was loud enough or whatever. So I didn't know how really to get along with people. And I came here, and at the end of the first step, there was a comma for a lot of years that said, and when I stop using, everything will be wonderful. And I'll get along with everybody, and it'll be great. And it was a real shock to me to find out some years later that there was no comma, and it didn't say that at the end of the first step. And today, I look at relationships a lot different. A lot of people at this particular convention helped me when my fiance and I broke up a few years ago. I had a real difficult time with that. And I came to this convention shortly thereafter, and a lot of folks helped me to stay focused on me and not trying to change him or the rest of the world or my NA community or, all of that. So So what I learned to do was I learned to work on my relationship with the God of my understanding. And that's always been a difficult relationship for me to work with. I had no faith, no trust. And I had this concept of, you screw up and I'm going to get you. And I got God a lot. Until somebody pointed out to me that reality just is, Diane, and you're really not that special for God to take that much energy just to get you. It just is. So I sought people who had spiritual programs that I really admired, and I wondered, how did you do this? How did you get this relationship with the God of your understanding? Because I heard and learned here that if I don't have that relationship, if I don't have the spiritual part of this program, I don't have a program. So I had to work on developing that relationship. And when I first started coming around, and I don't hear it too much anymore, at least in my area, but when I first started coming around, they told me, stay out of male-female relationships. If you're not in one, don't get in one. Give yourself a year. And that sounded real good for me, so I think it was 3.5, maybe 4 years later before I started to get into relationships. So I figured if one is good, more is better. And at that time I was moving a lot. Not that I was doing geographical cures, you see, but at that time I was living in Texas. And those people are kind of tough down there. They take life in this program real serious. They'll beat you up with the program till it gets into your head a little bit, And I decided to move back to the UP where it was safe, because it wasn't safe in Texas. There was a lot of crime, and I was going to be living alone again, and so I decided to move back up to the UP where it was safe and I could raise my son. And there was no way in God's green earth that I could get into a male-female relationship, because I knew everybody up there, and they were either already spoken for or they weren't any damn good, And so I thought this was a good idea. My girlfriend in Florida said to me, no, come to Florida, I need you. And I said, I need to go up to the UP. And she said, well, what are you going to do? Sit up there on a mountain and commune with God? And that's sort of what I did. I worked at working on this relationship with the God of my understanding and learning to trust. And through that I was able to learn to trust my sponsor. And by just putting out little bits, and if it didn't hurt me, then I could put out a little bit more. And through learning to trust my sponsor, now I had 2 areas I could trust in. I could trust with the God of my understanding, and I could trust with my sponsor. And I started to branch out from there and start trusting other folks in the program, and working on having relationships with people where I wasn't trying to get from them and they weren't trying to get from me, and accepting people for who they were and where they were. And I started to work on a relationship with me, because I didn't have a clue. I was absolutely clueless when I got here, and I was hopeless when I got here. And when I got to NA, I had 5 years and 9 months clean time. We didn't have NA up in the UK at that time. And I was dying. Every day I woke up wanting to die. And I was going everywhere. And I wasn't finding any solutions, and I wasn't finding the answers. But I didn't want to die, so I just hung on. And they finally started a NA up in the UP. And this guy blew in from town with some construction work that was going on, and I did coffee in groups at that time. That was my way of having relationships with people. We went as a group, And we got to talking, and he would say things like, geez, you sound a lot like me. You might want to try NA. And I said, I don't think so. I don't have time, thank you very much. I have all these other places that I have to go. And I didn't have a lot of trust that this fellowship would be any different than anywhere else I'd looked. So finally, he said to me, well, would you try NA? And I said, if it'll shut you up, get you the hell off my back, sure, I'll go. And I went to my first NA meeting with my hands sort of like this, because I wasn't going to be one of them. And I was too many other things, you know. And what happened was they read who was an addict. And my relationship with the family of Narcotics Anonymous started, because then I knew who I was, I knew where I belonged, and for the very first time, there was hope. And I woke up in the morning and I didn't want to die. And that took almost 6 years, you know. And I don't know, you know, finding home, because I never had home. I didn't get along with my family, you know, of origin. So finding home was really neat. And then I had to work on a relationship with my family here. So I got into service at the area level. Because I'd been doing service, you know, at the group level for a lot of years. So I got into service at the area level. And it was real amazing to me because I was afraid of everybody's anger, my anger, and your anger. Because that's what relationships meant to me. Who was the biggest and the baddest? And who could do what to whom? Because that's the way it always ended up, you know. In the first couple of area meetings that I sat into where somebody hit the table with their fist and yelled, man, I just was waiting to, I was just waiting for this to break out, you know? And it didn't, you know. And when it was all over with, people hugged each other and said, I love you. And I thought, this is really weird, you know. So I learned to trust the people in this fellowship, that even though they may not like what I have to say, or who I am, or what I'm doing, they can still love me, you know, and we love each other. So I worked on those relationships, and I tried to work on the relationships with my family of origin, because you people loved me, cared about me, and said, you know, you need to do this not so much for them, Diane, but for you. And I did that. I was able, you know, God's been really good to me. I had a good relationship with my mom before she died. I wasn't able to do that with my dad. And I was at this convention last year, and the Monday morning, for those of you who weren't here, the Monday morning reflection time was one of the most powerful places that I've ever been. And I left here with a new resolve to reach out to my dad one more time and to try to mend what I could of our relationship from my side of it. And I had heard a speaker a long time ago say that, you know, life is really short. And if you're at odds with somebody, you need to just pick up the phone and call them and tell them that no matter what it was that went on, with you it was no more. Because I can't afford to have that in my life today. And that whatever it was no more with you. And I tried doing that with my dad, but I didn't quite get that far in life. I would pick the phone up, and all of a sudden I was 3 years old again, and he was breathing my air and touching me, and we'd go off and running again. And a couple weeks after I left this convention last year, I got a phone call from my stepmother, and she said my dad wasn't doing real good and that I should ought to come down. And I talked to him on Sunday and said, I'll be there next Monday, Dad. I'm going to be there on Monday. And I didn't think he was going to die, you know. I didn't think he was that sick. And I flew down on Monday. And my best friend went with me because he didn't think I should ought to go alone. And we got in about midnight because of airports and car rental places and this kind of stuff. We didn't quite get there when we thought, and by the time I got over to where my dad lived, it was about midnight. And the lights weren't on in the house, so I just went and we got a room, and I called my sister and said, I don't mind waking her up in the middle of the night. And I said, this is where I am. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call that my dad had died. And I had a hard time, I still have a hard time, because I didn't get to make the amends that I wanted to make to him. Because when I would pick that phone up to call him and say whatever it is with me, Dad isn't anymore, it still was. It still was. It still hurt. I was still angry. I still had that resentment. You know, and for whatever reason, I wasn't able to let go of it. And I worked the steps on it. You know, and I prayed about it, and I talked to my sponsor. And people said, you got to give time. And I had to work on accepting that relationship with my dad, I guess that's the way it was supposed to be. You know, I don't know. But I got there on Monday, just barely, you know. But I didn't get to do it my way, you know. And the God of my understanding has a reason for everything. But I know today, you know, and it's a hard lesson to learn, that I have a resentment or an anger or whatever with somebody. And I have relationships with a lot of people today. You know, my best friend and I got engaged in Tennessee at the Volunteers Convention this past year. And that was really cool. You know, and we started a business. So that's cool, I think. More will be revealed. But I've learned that my relationship with you, with that significant other, with my family here and my family of origin, that if I am at odds with somebody today, that, you know, I do an inventory of me today, and not you. And I look at my character defects. And if there's hurt and anger there, if there's hurt there, then I talk to the God of my understanding about helping me to remove that hurt so that I can reach out and continue in this relationship and in this process of growing. You know, because I can't do it alone. It's not an I program, it's a we program. You know, and my relationship to the guy at the gas station is real important today. You know, it is. I built a relationship with one of the guys in town, and I'm really glad I did, because one day I went in there, filled up my van, and I didn't have a checkbook, credit card, I didn't have anything on me. And this guy knew me and said, okay. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll just bring my other car back and fill it up, and we'll just do it all in one, you know. And that was all right with him, you know. Today, I have that kind of relationship that I can walk out owing you money, and there's trust that I'll come back and pay it, you know. And that's really cool, because I don't have that, you know. I have a relationship with with county officials, you know, that blows my mind. Absolutely, you know. 11 and a half years ago, I was facing child endangerment charges. The infinite wisdom of the state of Wisconsin gave me a license for a treatment foster home. They give me other people's kids. You know, so I deal with judges and courts and social workers and cops and kids, you know, that come into my home, addict kids and non-addict kids. And they come into my home, and I have to work on a relationship, and sometimes it's like, God, please help me not to strangle this child, you know. You know, because I just want to punch them out. How dare you talk to me, the great Oz here, like that? You know, who do they think they are? You know, so this person who could not have a relationship with anyone. You know, today I have relationships that are meaningful and that are long-lasting. My friend from Florida came up to visit. I've known this woman since my daughter was in 2nd grade. My daughter's 28 now. I have never known, I mean, that's the only person in my life that I go back more than 11 years with, you know, that's known me more than 11 years. We found out one thing, that I've got ethnic envy, you know, I do. When I'm with the Mexicans, I want to be Mexican, you know, because I just want to be a part of, you know, and when I'm with the Italian, I thought I was Italian for the first 17 years of my life, you know. I mean, I was devastated to find out that I wasn't. And today I have relationships with all kinds of people, you know, and it's okay. And I don't have to be perfect today, and I don't have to be what I think you think I am. That was a lot of work and a lot of energy, and it wasn't very successful. You know, and in the last 11 years, you know, some things have happened in my relationships. First of all, I have not gotten married 6 times in the last 11 years. You know, this is like really amazing. And I've only been engaged once in the last 11 years. You know, and I've had this one special relationship that has gone through many trials. And even when it looked like there was not going to be that forever and ever amen type thing, you know, that marriage thing, somehow or another past the anger and the fear, that's the big one, you know, a friendship, because I learned here that the most important relationship that I need to have with another human being, be that male or female, is to like that person and to respect that person as a human being, you know. And a couple of months ago, and I get messages, or I get learning experiences from a lot of different places. I went to a movie. It was an impulse thing. It was playing in town. I said, oh, I wanted to see that. Got a babysitter and I went. And when I left, I wanted to sell everything that I owned, get a van, and get my 5 closest female friends together and get on the road. And that was a really new experience for me, because I don't like women. I don't trust women. I have no reason to trust women. And yet, I have learned in this past year how vitally important the women are in my life. That you guys are not my enemy anymore. I don't need to fight with you anymore. I don't need to compete with you anymore. I need to love you and I need to support you. You know, and I've learned, when I look back, I learned that women have been there to love me and support me in this family that we have here. And that's a real new experience for me. And it's taken me a long, long time to figure that out, you know. So, you know, somebody asked me this morning, you know, what type of relationship are you going to talk about? And I said, well, you know, I don't know, because, see, I don't plan. I was real good that I didn't find out until I got here, you know, because I don't want to plan. I did a lot of praying this morning. I went to a meditation on letting go. That was an excellent place for me to be this morning. And I prayed a lot. And when I pray a lot, I don't have any idea what I've said. And I'm at the point now where I don't even have a clue what I said, so I'm going to have to buy this tape, so I'll find out. And, you know, but I know that this program works, you know, it works in my relationships. And I listened to the tape of the relationship workshop that I did some years ago. And in that, we had spoken on an intimate level, on a male-female level, and I had said that if this relationship didn't work, if we went our separate ways, that I hoped And I believed at that time that we could still be friends, that we could still respect one another. And that happened. And it's only, only because of what y'all taught me that happened, you know. And that's how I like it today with all of my relationships, whether it's the guy at the gas station or the new kid coming in who's absolutely scared to death of me because I'm weird, you know. They're not used to it. She's got a white stripe, she has tattoos. This, you know, this is not a normal place. What are they doing? Sticking me in with this woman. But it doesn't matter what the relationship is today because I practice to the best of my ability what y'all taught me here in Narcotics Anonymous, the 12 steps and the traditions, you know. And it's not always easy. And sometimes I'd much rather put that personality out there because then I could hold a resentment and I could walk out and I could leave the fellowship sometimes because I get into personality things. And I take things real personal, whether it's intended or not, you know. And what I learned is I need to really work the steps on me and not you. You know, I think that's the way they were intended. I'm not sure. But it works today. My life is not perfect, you know. It's certainly not the way I painted the picture, you know, because I had the little nice fence and the big house and the minivan, and I was Donna Reed, and got along with everybody just wonderful. And that's not true today, but I can still work through that and trust my higher power and trust y'all, you know. And I haven't found anything in the last 11 years that was worth picking up over. I buried people, I buried addicts clean, and I buried them dirty. And I watched people come and go through a revolving door. And it's so good to come here and see faces that I saw 2 years ago when this convention first started. Tells me that this works, you know. And I have a relationship with you people here. We may only meet once a year, but in that 12 months from time to time, you all kept me clean when my dad died. 2 weeks after I left here. Your love and support that I got here, that kept me clean, you know, what I learned. And my friend said to me, you need to go to a meeting. And I was in a meeting the day that my dad died, and I was in a meeting the day that we buried him, and I was at a function the next day. And those people loved me and supported me, you know, and I have a relationship with those people. This is really amazing. This is truly amazing, but it works, you know, and I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm real grateful that y'all, that I got that wonderful letter that asked me to do this, and thanks for letting me share.
I'm an addict. My name is Paul.
Hi, Paul.
My family. When I got here, they asked me if the workshop that was selected for me was okay, and I looked at it and had time to think about it and had already formed some opinions about it, and I said, well, what else do you have to offer, and what are my options? And when this came up, it was one of those topics that I'm not sure that I know a lot about, and sure didn't have a lot of opinions on. And it was like, okay, for some reason that just struck me as this is probably where I need to be, probably what I need to be doing and looking at. As we sat here, one of the things I thought about was my history with relationships, and realizing that by the time I was 5 years old, my mom had been married 3 times. My dad has been married 4 or 5 times. So I have a very large extended family, a lot of step this and step that, and as a result of that, there never felt like there was a lot of intimacy. I mean, part of it, I'm sure, is me, but but it just seemed like there was so much family. There were so many people, and there was always somebody new, and oh, this is your cousin, and like I was related to half the state or something else. So, yeah. When I was 10 years old, the first best friend I ever had, well, from the time I was 4 till the time I was 10, moved away. Looking back, I can see that set up a series of experiences where I told me that if you love somebody, you'll lose them. Not to become attached to these people because they'll be taken out of your life. And since then, up until recovery, I never had a best friend all through school. Now, I was always very popular and had a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances, but with that, just like with my family, I never had to get intimate. When things got too close, it was time to go see so-and-so, So nobody ever knew me. One of the things I realized today is that the only thing people knew about me was the mask I wore. And I was the chameleon, I was the stoner in school. I was the vice president of school. I was on the sports. I was a chameleon, I was whoever I was with. That's who I was. And didn't have a clue who I was. And didn't know then how not to be something that I wasn't. I had wardrobes for this and wardrobes for that, and as soon as I put it on, it was like I put on that personality. I didn't come here with 6 marriages. I came here with 6 kids. My idea of relationships then became one of sexual content. If you became intimate, then there were other consequences, that resulted. But what I know today is that my first marriage was based on my mask having a relationship with her mask. And a part of my personality has been that I want to take care of you. The problem with that is I become dependent upon your neediness, and then I get you healthy enough where you don't have neediness, and I don't need you anymore, don't want you anymore, you don't want me anymore, you're too healthy, and it doesn't work. And then I wonder why, and then I'm attracted to the next needy person that comes along, because I just want to help. So as we sat here, one of the things that I thought about that has been that process of changing those behaviors. What I can see is that the quality of my relationships is in direct proportion to my own healthiness, my own arrested disease state. When I'm in my disease, we ain't having healthy relationships. We're wearing big masks, lots of ego, wanting you to fulfill my needs, my dependencies. And I think the first thing that the program started to teach me was that, the program says, about relationships, it's with God's self and society, and God's self and others. And the more that I have come to know me, come to understand me, come to accept me for who I am, the more that is translated or spilled over into my affairs with you. And the only word that stuck out for me, since I knew I was going to do this topic, was the word commitment. Because I'm a runner. You know, that's how I did my dope. That's how I lived my life. That's how I did relationship. You know. If I didn't like what was going on, I would run. I called it many other things, but the bottom line is I wouldn't work through it. I wouldn't work through the disagreement or the argument, or the rough times, the bad times. If you had too many problems, I didn't have time to work through them because I wasn't committed to the relationship. And so that commitment had to start with me. My own personal recovery and getting to know who I was. You know. And it took a while before the thoughts of running back out there went away. It wasn't an easy process. I think the relationships that are the hardest for me, you know, are the closest ones. The marriage and the family. You know, I can't wear the mask. There's too much history. I mean, we know each other too well. And in all aspects of my beingness are revealed there. You know, every defect, I mean, it's all seen. And it changes. You know, I always want this stable. I want things to always be the way they are. And what's happening today or what's okay today may not be okay tomorrow. You know, because I've changed, or the relationship has changed, or the relationship has grown. It was about 5 years ago when I met this woman that was the first person, it was the first person that I ever really got honest with. A best friend. We could share anything, and we still do. Very open about all aspects of our disease. You know, all aspects of our past sexual activities. And our defects. And yet at that time, I don't know if I was aware of the commitment that was occurring. But as we discussed a future and chose to become married, that even within our vows that we wrote, we included that we wouldn't run. We'd make a commitment to do whatever, but that running wasn't to be the first option. The relationship that I have with myself, to the best of my ability, is based on honesty. My ability to see me for who I really am. Knowing what my assets, my liabilities are. You know. And I don't know how to describe really the relationship with the God of my understanding. As I thought about that today, it seems to be more of one of receiving the love, of being worthy enough, good enough to be loved. And then trusting, I get that inner dialogue that says, I'm with you always. Trust me. I'm here. I'm close to you. You're not alone in this. And there's that sense of hope and peace that okay, nothing's happening that he doesn't know about, and yet being able to receive it. I think that I know that there's a commitment there. The relationship I have, whether it's the meditation practices or service or whatever, that those are committed areas of my life. That seems to be a real essential ingredient is commitment. I know that relationships that include society or others have many different layers, from those very casual acquaintances, to the ones where, man, you just click, and the co-worker type of relationships, where just some of them are hot and some of them are cold. And I don't get hung up on I'm supposed to love everybody and be a friend with everybody and like everybody, and I just have to be true to me and be willing to be open. And if it happens, if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. But I don't get hung up if it's not happening. Because I know who I am today and know that it's not based on discrimination or prejudices, or it's just the way it is. The relationship I have with my brother is like no relationship. It's not good, it's not bad. We just don't have anything in common, and we see each other at Christmas. It's just the way it is. There's no hard feelings, there's no anger, no resentment. It's just not a relationship. The only thing we have in common is blood in our genes, and I wasn't, part of my belief system didn't have anything to do with blood being thicker than water. For me. There was too much blood out there, I guess, or I don't know. It just wasn't instilled. The other message that I did get as a child about relationships, which is, it had an effect on me. My mother, having been married so many times, taught us that if you get angry, you'll get divorced. And I think that has been the hardest internal message to overcome, because a part of my process then is that I don't become angry. I become introverted and withdraw, as opposed to raging or expressing outwardly. And then we'll take that anger and process it and deal with it a different way at a later time or whatever. But that's, the relationships for me, based on awarenesses, then are this constant area in my life where I continue to practice and to work and to see some things that work, some things that don't. Not only are there days that I have bad days, but there's also days you have bad days too. And it's not all my responsibility. I also tend to look at others as mirrors. That what I'm seeing in you is what I'm seeing in me. I keep thinking that relationships are me and you, and I forget that maybe there's a bigger dimension of all this where we're not separated, but that there's a oneness in all things, and that you're here to help the divine human experience of experiencing all things. But a part of my addiction is that I become attached to whatever I experience and like. If I like it, I've been addicted to it. You know? And I keep forgetting that my lesson in life is not to be attached, not to be dependent or addicted to those things that are very pleasurable or enjoyable. You know, just experience them and let them go. And yet the nature of my disease and my illness is one that I try to stay away from those things I don't like and are painful and move toward the things I do like, you know. And my problem is then that I gradually make my world smaller and smaller until there's only one thing that I like and become dependent upon it. And we know the cycle of addiction. You know, whether it's food or sex or clothes or cars or whatever, that, you know. I guess the most rewarding relationship for me has been the one with my children. He was probably 4 years old before he ever called me Dad. I was always Paul to him, which didn't feel right, but I didn't understand why that was going on. I thought it was because that's what his mother was calling me. The only thing he ever heard. But I know today that that's not true, because even when my oldest daughter in the current marriage will call me Paul, she calls me Paul Daddy. I'm always Daddy. You know. But she hears that and it's like, oh, you're Paul Daddy. Okay, that's cool. You know, and that the ex-wife relationship is one of those non-relationships when it's good and real rough when it's not, and the kids are the ones, of course, that are affected, because that's the pawn that gets used in that scenario. And so the first 2 years of the divorce, you know, I went to any length to be a part of and to maintain and nurture that relationship, and it finally had gotten to the point where it was too expensive for me to do that. I mean, the costs were too great. Too many hoops to jump through, too many broken promises or broken decisions, and for whatever reason, you know, it wasn't working, and then they moved quite a ways away, and it's not working at all now. I might see them once a year, you know, and that's real hard to watch these kids grow up and not be a part of that. And the only saving grace I have is that while I was clean, I did the best I could. I made every effort that I could at that time. The message that I left that relationship was that I was a terrible father. I was abusive and had no business fathering children. And the relationship that I have with my children today is totally different. When my oldest daughter was very young, I spent 6 months to a year at home. I was laid off, so it must have been 6 months, you know, taking care of her full time. And here recently, you know, 5 months ago when my daughter was born, a decision had to be made about, due to the medical needs, how are we going to meet that? And it was a decision for me to basically quit my job and stay home and to be a full-time father. And non-traditional, not a lot of support from society, you know, but but to be there. You know, it's like I'm given the opportunity to raise all my children, you know, in the ones that I have. And the abuse isn't there. We have a wonderful, beautiful relationship. We love spending time together and doing things. You know. It's kind of, well, it is the amends. Part of it's the amends that I make for the wrongs that I did in the first marriage, and accept it today. I could get real hung up on wanting to work, and it's my right or whatever, and it's like, what I'm getting out of being a father is greater, a lot more than I ever thought it would be. You know, being able to introduce them to the principles of this program. You know, the peace, the serenity, the acceptance, the unconditional love. You know, so if it wasn't for this program, you know, I wouldn't have got any of it. You know, I heard the same thing when I came in, no relationships for a year, and luckily there was a grand sponsor involved that talked to me about relationships that I had to have in that first year. You know, the one with myself, honesty, the one with God, and one with a sponsor. You know. One with the fellowship, one with the program. And that's where I was going to learn the basic, that all these other relationships were going to be built on. And the miracle is I can come here and really screw them up. And you will love me through it, accept me, and teach me. You will show me and not tell me what it looks like and how to do it. And then I can take it out. Having had some experience with it now under my belt, I can begin to practice it where it's not so safe, where it's not so okay, and yet have enough of a program through the inventory process to be able to see if I've harmed, I can make right. And if I'm wrong, I can admit to it. And if I'm right, I can keep doing it. You know. So my whole experience with it then has come down to relationships are opportunities for me to learn how to love. They're experiences and love. And I don't always get that right because I'm not always loving. But I get the opportunity to grow in every area, every aspect of my life. And when I can be who I am, it makes for very beautiful relationships. I'm grateful for the best friend and then the wife that also has the same program, where we can grow together. You know, the convention logo is so fitting. It's with love that we grow. And we need to grow. We have to grow. We are growing entities, or whatever you want to call it. And without that love, we die. And so I'm grateful for your love and all that you've given. All that you've shown. Because you did show me. You didn't tell me. Thank you for letting me share.
Good evening, Rob. Before we open the floor for sharing, I need to remind everyone that you are being taped. And if you do not wish to be taped, please let me know and have the machine turned off. When I first got here, like what I've heard shared, you know, was those same things about not getting a relationship for the first year, and those 5 most important relationships with God, self, steps, fellowship and recovery. And I accepted that totally after falling on my face a couple of times by trying to have male-female relationships, and I hung on to those 5 little concepts of relationships. Then I remember my first convention, man, and I was tearing through all these titles. Relationships, that's what I want, So I went to all the relationship workshops I could ever find at a convention. My first year and a half, that's where I went, relationship workshops. I talked to other addicts and said, hey, did you go to such and such convention? They'd say, yeah. Let me have your relationship workshop tape, okay? Because I want to know how to do it, Because when I first got involved in relationships with women that was in the program, and of course I didn't choose to have intimate relationships with men in a sexual way, my first true love was a black widow. You know how they'll eat their mate, okay, consume them, and I'm not trying to reflect on anybody. I'm not putting any women down, okay. And then, but my second one was really great because she was a praying mantis. They eat their mates too. And then my third experience of having a relationship with someone else who was in recovery, who had over a year. It was like, I wish to God that World Service had come up with a tattoo that we'd stamp on each other's head. Warning, unless you have 10 years clean, do not attempt to have a relationship with this person. They have too many issues. I'm serious, y'all. It breaks my heart. But I grew through that, because of your love and the people that live in my area. I watched some of them have healthy, loving, emotionally available relationships. Then I watch them end in divorce. And I think, well, that's not going to happen to me. And that's what happened. So it's like when we were listening to the main speaker last night, Tommy shared, about how, NA is a young fellowship. We don't know how to have healthy female-male relationships. It's like, I bought it for a few minutes, because I didn't listen to what he was sharing after that. I bought into that, because I have never, in my own area, I take that back. In my area, I haven't seen any people make it past that 3, 4, 5 year place yet. But the thing is that none of them used, and they're still coming around, and we're all still friends. And my wife and I got a divorce, and she's still my best friend, and she knows all my secrets. I still live there. It's not, oh man, what's that term? Codependence? It ain't that. That's my friend. I love her. She still loves me. It's like I want to still take care of her because she's dying, and I still commitment is the word. Yeah, just like I'm committed to my first sponsor. If he called me up in any time, I would go there. She calls me anytime, I'll go there. Anyone that I've had a committed relationship with, I honor that because God, y'all, when I first came around, you kept me alive. You were committed to me. And I'm not saying that selfishly, I'm not thinking that selfishly. I'm remembering how selfless everybody was. They were committed to the newcomer and told me to keep coming back, and damn it, I did. Grateful for it. I'm gonna open it up now.
I'm truly a grateful recovered addict named Michael. Hi, family. First, I want to give thanks to my higher power, for whom I choose to call God, for allowing me another day to be clean, and Narcotics Anonymous for allowing me a forum to get honest. Because prior to coming here, the addicts who asked me to share at this convention, they played with me about relationships, and I got real scared because of the fear of me having to get honest about who I am and what's going on with me, in my life. And I had to take a look at that when they told me that it would be on a different topic, which was a sigh of relief. And in the process of me looking at that, why I didn't want to share it was because I thought my things were so personal. And what they taught me in the program of Narcotics Anonymous was that this is where I come and share those things at. Those things that those deep, dark secrets, those kind of things like that. And for me, I know what really scared me about the topic of relationships is that I didn't know how to have one. I didn't want anybody to know that I can have I didn't know what a relationship was. I thought that was one of those intimate things. Today I can honestly say that through the program of Narcotics Anonymous, I've learned to have a relationship with my higher power, who I choose to call God today, and that was first and foremost. And then the scary part after that was to have a relationship with other men, that was real scary for me. And I ain't ashamed to say that, because the men today, I can honestly say I love them, you know. And I love them unconditionally because of what they've taught me or what they've shared with me. You know, some of the intimate things they shared with me to get me through, 2 years and 10 months of clean time and recovery, you know. The recovery process didn't kick in till the last year and 10 months. The first year was just staying clean. You know, and those men were the ones who reached out to me and helped me to understand the process of recovery, see. You know, they told me some things coming in here, and that was to get phone numbers from men. But that didn't sound interesting to me. You know what I mean? Why not get the women's phone number? Them the ones I really want to be with. And to be honest with you, those are the ones that kept me coming back the first year I was clean. You know, and now I'm getting honest now. You understand what I'm saying? I'm getting honest now, you know, because that's what this is all about. You know, whatever works for you. If it keep you clean, you know, and keep you coming back, you continue to do that until you get into this process of recovery. Because that's what worked for me at the beginning. Today, I still have those issues of getting into relationships. I don't want to say I'm in one totally, but I have affected some people in my life, and one of them is my daughter. See, in order to get a relationship, I thought at the beginning was to buy her everything that she wanted. You know what I mean? We want to really clean that up so they can really be our friends. But that wasn't what it was all about. You know, other addicts had talked to me and told me, hey, the best thing you can give her is quality time. You know, spend some time and listen to her and see where she's coming from. You know, today I'm working on a relationship with her as well as men and my God. You know, those are important things today in my life. You know, the female aspect of me in recovery, as far as getting with them, I know the key for me is to be honest. Because I was dishonest for so long that, you know, it was just second nature for me to be dishonest and tell them, you know, that I ain't got no woman and I got one at home. I have to work on that. I really have to work on that. I'm a lot more honest than I used to be when I first came here, before I came here. And it's okay for me to tell them that I'm not ready for a relationship, because I used to let people badger me into a relationship. You know, like I said, I don't know what relationships are. I know how to take hostages, though. You know what I mean? I know about taking hostages. I didn't know very much about relationships, because if you didn't do what I wanted you to do, it wasn't going to work anyway, you know? But I have the decency today not to take hostages. And I'm not ashamed to tell those individuals that I come in contact with, meaning females, that that's a part of my life. See, so you taught me how to be honest, you know what I mean? And to not put more into that than supposed to, you know. And for that very reason, I like what he said about, you know, comes commitment through relationships. And that's something I really need to work on, the commitment. I'm committed myself to the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. You know, I think it's time for me to quit being scared of relationships, because I've heard it so many times. You know, you won't know if it's going to work unless you try it, you know. So, for me personally, I thank you for allowing me to get honest with me today. And I'll keep coming back. I'm an addict named Michael.
I'm an addict. My name is Skip. I'm gratefully recovering through the grace of God, then they program many people. I don't know, I think this is a program of relationships, you know, and for me it was kind of like on-the-job training, and, you know, especially with other people. You know, I had a relationship with many substances when I came here, and I was very committed to them. You know what I mean? And I came here and they told me to use a lot of those negative things that I have done and turn them into a positive when I came into my recovery, you know. And that was one of the things, and commitment is a big part of it. And communication, you know, I came here and they told me the steps were about relationships, that the first 3 steps was building a relationship with a higher power, or power greater than myself, you know, and that 4 through 8 was building a relationship with Skip. And for me, I had to build a relationship with myself before I can build you know, I knew about lust, you know, I knew about sex ships, You know what I mean? I knew about those things, you know what I mean? But a commitment to another person, you know, in any form, you know, I shunned away from, because I didn't want people to know me, you know, because I didn't know me. And through working steps in my life and learning about steps, you know, in the process of recovery, I started that journey, you know, with the 4th step, and started to find out about Skip, and started to build that relationship with me, you know, and in 9 and 10, I build relationships with other people. In 11 and 12, I build on those relationships that I've already started with my higher power, with myself, and with others, you know, and for me, this program is a program of relationships, you know, letting people know who I am, you know, and not being afraid to let you know who I am, you know, and I think a lot of it was fear, you know. I didn't want people to know, you know, the real Skip. You know, I like to come and put on this facade, you know, that, you know, I'm always this real happy person, or life is always just so great, you know what I mean? And I put on that mask, and I wore it for a long time, you know, and getting to know myself, I could let those barriers down, you know, and know that Skip gets angry, you know, Skip gets impatient, you know what I mean? And Skip has all those things that other human people have, but sometimes Skip takes them to extremes, you know, and this program is trying to give me a balance in my life today. You know, my relationship with my sponsor, you know, isn't always, you know, the greatest. You know, sometimes we have differences of opinion, and I respect his opinion, he respects mine, and, you know, that's great, you know, because it tells me that there's more than one mind at work. You know, if we all go around cloning each other, you know what I mean? I'm thinking for you, and you're thinking for me. So if we have a difference of opinion, that's great, you know, and I respect that. You have enough respect for me to form opinion, you know. So that's great. And my relationship with my sponsor has grown, and, you know, it's not always perfect. You know what I mean? I don't put my sponsor on the pedestal anymore. I look my sponsor in the eye, and just like he don't co-sign my stuff, I try not to co-sign his, you know. And I'll tell him, I'll call him on the shit, and he calls me on mine, and it's great. You know what I mean? And sometimes we don't talk for weeks, you know, and that's great. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to get angry. You know what I mean? I'll remove myself, because I can't afford that stuff today. My relationship, I have a woman in my life today, and that relationship is good, you know, but again, it's not always perfect. You know what I mean? You know, I wish I could stay here and say my relationships, you know, were always rosy, you know what I mean? And it's just like life, they're up and down, you know what I mean? And you know, I'm not going to say, well, it's, you know, it's great, and, you know, we're recovering to the best of our abilities, you know what I mean? And, you know, sometimes we're not, you know, sometimes, you know, we argue, we fight, you know, like cats and dogs, you know what I mean? But it's okay. I don't have to use about it. I have my sponsor's number, and I remove myself today. Today, I don't stay in my shit. But this program for me is one of relationships, and there are some beautiful relationships with people in this program that I hold dear to my heart. You know, there's special people in my life, you know, that allowed me to be myself and didn't judge me for who I was and loved me in spite of me. You know, and that took a lot. You know what I mean? That shows me the unconditional love in this program. You know, sometimes I'm not well liked, you know, for a lot of things that I say are very controversial, but that's okay. You know what I mean? I can do that today, you know. I'm not afraid to tell people where I stand, because I stand for something that, if I believe in it, I'm going to stand for it. And that's the bottom line, you know. I draw a line there, and I'm not one of these people to, you know, patsy around with it, you know, because if I believe in it, I'm going to say it, you know, and it's not always right. And that doesn't justify me saying it, you know what I mean? Sometimes I harm people for what I say. These holes in my head always get me in trouble, you know what I mean? This one here and these here, you know. Sometimes I just need to spend more time on myself. But this program is beautiful. I love it. And it's about relationship. They told me, and I came here, you know, it was suggested, don't get in a relationship for a year, Skip. And I said, what am I going to do, dig a hole, you know, and jump in, you know? And I said, I can't do that, you know. And again, it was suggested, you know what I mean? It's not written in nowhere, you know what I mean? It was just suggested. And I understand why, though, because it gave me a time to build a relationship with myself. You know, and I respect. If they would have probably put it that way, you know what I mean, I would have respected it. But I was like, no. And, you know, like with me, I rebel, you know, resistance to change. But I'm grateful to you people in this place. And I like to wish you all love, peace, and recovery. I keep coming back.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Hi, everybody. I'm an addict named Kim.
Hey, Kim.
I'm real glad to be here. I don't know, I got a lot going through my head listening to everybody talk. I know I didn't trust a whole lot when I first got here, and it was the relationship with my sponsor that I gained some trust again. I had a real hard time with women. I had a very stormy relationship with my mother and with different friends that I had. We're not real nice people when we're using, and I know that I acted in some ways out there that weren't cool, and some women acted in some ways towards me that weren't cool, and I brought all that in here with me, and women scared me. It was easier to get with the men because they said nice things, they made me feel good for that moment until I left. But what I found out was that I needed to get with these women. They were going to save my ass, and it was tough. It was real tough. Building the relationship with my sponsor was where it started. Building a relationship with this program, belief that just maybe this program and this sponsor could help me get clean and stay clean. I didn't want what was out there anymore. And I was able to do that. I had a real hard time with God in that relationship. It took me probably well over 2 years to establish that relationship. I didn't believe when I got here at all. And today, I have faith. And I just, it's like I just kind of go along and I don't have to manipulate and make things go my way. It's, if this door closes, this one opens. And I know that means that's the direction that I'm supposed to go in. And that's that faith and that trust, again, in that higher power. At about 2 years clean, I got into a relationship with a man, and I had some really neat people in my life at that time, and what they taught me was keep the focus on you. And I had a real hard time doing that, and I'm a lot better at it today. We're both in recovery, and we got married a year ago, and it's wonderful. And I don't, in my 4 steps, one of the things that was real clear was that I was very selfish and self-centered in all of my relationships. And so I have to be aware of that, and what this program is teaching me is to be more loving and caring and giving and forgiving. And I try to do that today. About 1.5 years ago, in my area, there was a few women, and we really wanted to get together and start writing through the steps and just kind of a support thing. And so we started that. And out of that time, I have a relationship with these women that I never ever thought I could have before. The intimacy that we share is beyond belief. I never thought I could have or feel that safe with a group of women as I do with these. I can share anything with them, and they feel the same way with me, and I'm grateful to have that. I mean, real grateful to have that. I don't know, I look at the way I was when I was out there using and where I'm at today and where my life is. It's a miracle. I mean, it's simply a miracle. I was on that road to death, and today I live, and it's wonderful. One of the other things that I've had to really work on as far as any relationship goes is boundaries, and where that first came to play for me was sponsoring people. I had a real hard time with wanting to fix people and wanting to always be there at the expense of myself and putting my needs off to help someone else, and there has to be a balance there somewhere. And I recently, the issues of boundaries came up again. I'm getting into a field with my degree where I want to help other addicts get clean and stay clean. And I had to do an internship for school, and it was real clear that that's a new area for me, and the boundaries aren't real clear yet. And I know that with experience that will come too, and I've gotten with some other people that are in that field, that are in recovery, and have been able to talk about that. And yeah, I don't have all the answers right now, but I know that they'll come, and as I push forward beyond that fear and keep going, that those answers will come. And that's what recovery is about for me, is just to keep pushing on, and I keep learning, and I'm grateful that I have that willingness to learn, that open-mindedness is there, that I take it from whatever direction it comes from. So I'm real glad to be here. We didn't get here till late last night, but I needed to get away. I get real caught up in school and my life and things that are going on, and I need a break like this every once in a while. Thanks. Love y'all.
I'm an addict named Steve.
Hey, Steve.
I'm real shaken. I don't know. When I've always been to relationships, the topic in the workshop, I think of the female and the sex and that. And for some reason I was thinking of this today, and I realized the growth in myself, because I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of the relationship that I've developed with myself and with my higher power and with the people in the program. And it's been good, it's been challenging, and it's been a journey. Because the only relationship I ever had before was with my drugs for a number of years. So I didn't know how to do relationships with anything, with myself. I was empty. And so I just feel a sense of growth today through it all, because as long as I don't use, I stand to have a relationship with somebody. Okay? And that's good, whether it's good or bad. I'm going to have a relationship, and it's not going to be with a needle, it's not going to be with a methadone clinic, it's not going to be with alcohol, As long as I'm not having that, I'm going to have a relationship with somebody. And I have to be centered with myself with that relationship. And usually when I'm having a relationship with myself, I seem to be more acceptable to having those with others. And that's not always easy for me, because again, I didn't know how to have relationships, especially with coworkers. It's an everyday thing with me. And I thank you for sharing that, because I don't have to take it so seriously. If I'm not having a good one, that's all right. If I'm having if I am, that's all right too. And try to leave it, Not be so serious about it all. I can go on and on and on, but it's been great. I've been over here just holding back the tears because, I have such a relationship with my daughter today. It's phenomenal. And I used to hold her, when she's a baby. I didn't want her to grow up, because I was lost. I was so fearful for the pain she may have to have. Okay? I didn't want that for her. I had so much hate and fear. And today, that's been taken away because there's love out there today. Okay? There's some love there. It's not all pain and hate and destruction, And that makes me happy. It makes me happy to know that there's hope, that I have a solid, decent relationship with her today. She hugs me and I can feel it. I can feel it, Daddy. She'll always be my little girl. And that's great, And I just had to share that, I just had to let the tears flow. I've been over there, it's just like I had to let them out, Because that is what I feel today. And that's what this program has given me to be able to have, To be able to hug my mother just the other day after 4 or 5 years of even being clean, and actually hug her and mean it and feel it. It has taken a while. Because we're so much alike in that hardness and that core and the mask and the boundaries. And that was touching. And that's what makes me want to keep coming back, That's what keeps me wanting to stay. Those things, where people may say they're little things, but they're they're just so overwhelming. And that's all I have. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing.
I'm Acne Mike.
Right?
How you doing? Yeah, as a little kid, my mother remarried, and all of a sudden I had 6 grandparents and 3 dads, and you know, I had no way. I don't know how. My dad left me when I was 3 years old, and I remember that, I guess, because I developed. I've got to know him for the past 7 years, but I don't. I can see I'm a lot like him, but I don't. You know, I know he let me die before, and you know, he told me that if I quit using drugs, he quit smoking cigarettes, and he still smokes cigarettes today. And I got 3 and almost 4 years clean, and I know that he's lied to me before, so he know nothing about that. But I'm just, you know, I've got the ability. I'm just realizing that I got this ability, and this is where it comes from. It's the ability to hold you back, to not let you be my friend, and not let you know me, because I've done it all my life. Since when I was a kid, I moved from town to town to out to New York and out to Massachusetts and all over the place. My dad worked for IBM, and we moved quite a bit, you know, and so like, you know, I all these friends I got to know. All of a sudden, I ain't moving, you know, I ain't gonna be a friend no more, and I'll see you again probably, you know, but I got this wall around me, and I'm starting to poke holes in it now. It's just starting to get, I don't know, it's kind of scary and everything. I'm secure here, I'm safe, and why should I poke holes in this, you know, but I know that I need to, because I'm gonna go insane in this unless I do something about it. And you know, it just is. I just had to say that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing.
We're out of time. Would you like to help me close?